Thank you for being here with us. I am Lise, Ashaara, your host, and I am delighted to welcome our guest, Karen Bell. Welcome, Karen. Wonderful to have you here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you on this day.
So, Karen, today we'll be discussing your topic, how to develop your psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So, to begin, could you start by sharing what are psychic abilities?
Sure. Well, that's a beautiful question to open with because I think there's a lot of misconception. Often when people hear that word psychic, they think fortune teller or predicting the future. That's very common. But the word psychic actually means, the etymology of the word means of the soul. So when we're speaking of psychic abilities, we're speaking of the language of the soul, the way that your soul and also your team of spirit guides, guardians, your loved ones in other dimensions of reality, how they communicate with you, right? This is the way that they communicate. So there are 7 different psychic abilities. Everybody has access to these. Everyone is psychic because we are all vibrational. We're all energy. Not everyone is aware of how it feels to receive a psychic impression or psychic information. So I think that's where the confusion lies, because someone could be receiving information and just not realize that's what it is because we don't really talk about it in our culture. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's a form of communication.
It's form of communication, and is it what we call clairaudience, clairvoyance, and so on? Is it the same thing for you, or would you say?
Yeah. So what you're describing with the clairs those are the psychic senses. So we all have different psychic senses. There are 7 of them. I'm happy to go through them if you want to, but the most common one, or the one that most people can relate to, is clairsentience, which is this psychic sense of feeling. If I went out on the street and started talking to people and asked them, have you ever had, a good feeling about something or a bad feeling about something or someone, and particularly parents and mothers, pretty much everyone would say, yes, I can relate to that. So that's clairsentience. That's when you have a feeling, and maybe you don't know why you have that feeling, but you have a good feeling or a bad feeling. So that's the most common one. And when people are learning to access their psychic ability, that's the one that's easiest to access. But there are others. So clairvoyance is related to seeing. And this is when we receive visions either in our mind's eye, or some people see them externally with their physical eyes. It's much more common to receive clairvoyant information and see it in your mind's eye. So that's clairvoyance. Clairaudience is hearing. So we might hear music, or we might hear voices. That is another one of the senses. Claircognizance claircognizance means knowing. And what that one is it's instant knowing. So if you had a claircognizant impression, if you just know that something is true without knowing how or why you know it. It's just almost like a download. I describe it kind of like airdrop. We have airdrop on our devices, transferring information from one device to the next. So all of a sudden you just have this knowing, and you don't know how or why that got there, but you have an instantaneous knowing. That's claircognizance. And then there's 3 more, so bear with me. So there's one that is not as talked about, is what I would call, some people call it clairphysicality or clairphysical or somatic intuition. And this is when we're receiving a psychic impression, but it's coming as a sensation in the body. So we might have a contracted feeling or an expansive feeling. We might actually have a physical sensation. That's another psychic sense. And then the last 2 have to do with smell and taste. So clairalience is you might smell if let's say your mother is in the spirit world, you might smell her perfume when she's around you. Or taste, clairgustance is when you might have a taste, even though you're not actually eating something, you're having a psychic taste. So those are our clear senses, or our psychic senses. And it's really worth exploring, because as you explore this, you get to know, each person is unique. And so we all have different ways of receiving information. Mm-hmm. So you might be stronger in one than the other. And it's really worth exploring that to get to know how this information feels in your system and how it comes to you.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. It's like each of each of us is different with those those abilities or senses. That's the thing I still don't really grasp, is the difference that can be made between ability and sense. Or is it because we develop our sense that it becomes an ability? And what would be the benefit of developing those abilities?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I've never really thought of that before. But I would say just in this moment, like psychic senses, psychic abilities, to me, that's just different words describing the same thing. Now, the reason that people might want to consider developing it is because it, again, facilitates communication with your true identity, your soul self, your higher self. And so when you have that ability to receive these impressions from your higher self, what I've experienced is that life becomes a little bit smoother, right? It's not that you don't have challenges, but you are constantly being guided, whether you realize that you are or not. You're being guided by your higher self, your soul. You're being guided by your loved ones that have transitioned to spirit before you. You're being guided by your team of spirit guides and guardians that care about you, know you. So there's all of this potential access to this guidance that I would say most people are not tapping into. So when we develop our psychic senses, all of a sudden those senses start to open and we have clarity. Maybe we know what to do, or we have an insight on how to perceive a challenging situation differently, more in alignment with how our higher self or our soul is seeing that situation or that person. And that is really transformative. That changes your life when you start living that way, right? Rather than living from the limitation of I'm just this human, right, with this mind, and you're not having access to those higher realms or that higher information that's always coming through to you.
Yes, absolutely. It's this intuition that specifically in the Western world, we are not, as you were mentioning, we are so our whole as a child and in school and so on, we are so guided to be just thinking and in an organized mental manner. So it's true that all those intuitions and senses, we tend to suppress them, really, in fact.
Yes, 100%, right? And, our thinking mind, the logical mind, that still has a place, but it's just that if we're cutting out our intuitive system, there's a lot that we're missing if we're cutting that out completely. And like I said, life just becomes more graceful. There's more of a flow when we realize we have 24/7 access to this information that is always, I would say, in alignment with the highest good of us and of everybody connected to us. So,
yes, absolutely. So when a person begins to be open to this inner intuition, how would you recommend that they begin to experience this and develop it and make it really, trusted?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, we have to recognize that for the most part, when this energy and information comes to us, it's subtle, right? It's not loud. It's not domineering, right? It's subtle. It's a quiet inner voice or a subtle feeling or sensation. And so in order to be really receptive to that energy and information, we have to quiet our system. We have to quiet our mind, right? So meditation is something that we really have to commit to if we want to develop our psychic senses. And the reason for that is we have to quiet our system. We have to calm the actual physical body, the nervous system. We have to quiet the mind, right? Because in that state, it's a more receptive state, so that subtle energy, those subtle impressions, we can actually pick up on what those are. If you, if you're very stressed out and your body is in a state of stress, or if your mind is just, you can't stop your mind and you have a loud, chattery mind that doesn't stop, that actually blocks you from receiving these subtle impressions coming in. So meditation, it sounds so simple, but committing to a daily practice of meditation for at least, I would say, 15 minutes, if not 20, and maybe even twice a day if you're starting out, so that you can create, I talk a lot about creating the state of being the state of being that allows you to receive and recognize the information. And then, of course, once you receive that information, you strengthen the muscle by actually taking action on the guidance you receive, which sometimes is the hard part, right? Actually moving forward, actually taking action. If you get an impression or a message, right, you strengthen that and you build trust by taking action, because you take action and then what happens? You see, what's the result of that? What was the result of following my intuition, right? And so when you have that positive experience, that it builds that muscle and you can, start to feel more confident that you can trust those impressions and that voice going forward.
Yes, absolutely. That's when you speak about all this stress, that's the way I felt for a big part of my life. I was always, in fact, stressed. Physically stressed, but I didn't understand it at that time, and little by little, I started to finally listen to my body. And that's how I really, made my big move, so to speak, about listening to this, to this voice, to this intuition on those abilities. So it's beautiful what you are saying, and it's also very reassuring, because many people don't trust themselves and think it's only for specific people with specific gifts, and that's why I like this notion of abilities rather than gift. Okay.
I'm not a fan of the word gift. When people, because it's I don't know, it separates. Just like you're saying, it's like, here are the psychics and the mediums over here and everyone else is over there. No, that's not true. Everyone has these abilities and everyone can strengthen them. And like I said, it's your direct access to your higher self and source. So of course you'd want to develop that, right? I'm flattered when people call it a gift, but just in my opinion, I think it's something that we all have, right? It might be latent because we grow up in this culture that kind of shuts that down at an early age, but it's there underneath the surface.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also maybe sometimes people are scared, and this is a common concern. I think that probably your clients always are asking you, how can we protect ourselves when we are opening up to those?
Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So, again, if we think of this notion of creating the optimum state of being to receive the energy and information that we're looking for, you could think of that as your higher self and your spirit team and these guides and guardians. They are operating at a higher frequency, right? So when we calm our physiology, when we shift our state, what's actually happening is we're raising our vibration to connect with that higher frequency in those higher realms. So here's what Sarai has said about protection, because that's a common question. She talks about that we have access, or we tend to interact with beings of a like frequency, whether they're actually here in the physical, so other humans, or beings in other dimensions. We tend to attract to us and interact with beings that are on the bandwidth of our frequency. So the key to optimum protection, we want to call it that, is maintaining our vibration in this higher state. Now, how do you know that you are in this higher state? Well, that comes back to just always being aware of what your state of being is in every moment. How am I feeling? How am I feeling physically? How am I feeling mentally, emotionally? Right? You know when you feel good and when you feel a little bit off. So when you're developing these abilities, and when you're pausing to tune in, you want to make sure that you check in with your state of being first, right? You want to feel good physically, mentally, emotionally. If you don't, if you're tired, if you're stressed, if your mood feels low, it's not always the best time to be trying to tap in, right? The other thing that she said is that, we all have these little rituals that we do that make us feel protected. We could use sage, sometimes crystals, essential oils. Before this call, I had my tinctures, right? I like sound clearing. So there's all these beautiful little rituals. But the key with that is, do those rituals shift your state? Really? That's the question. Because if they do, then they're effective. It's not that the tinctures or the oils or the crystals inherently, are emanating something. It's, does that practice feel like it shifts your state? And for some people, those things do, but we're all different. So for some people, it's going for a walk in the woods. Or for someone who's artistically minded, maybe they want to sit down and paint. And what you'll notice, especially with intuition, is that a lot of times when these impressions pop in, it's when you're relaxed and when you're maybe not trying too hard, but it's when you're driving or when you're having a shower or when you're not even trying. Now, why is that? It's because you're calm. It's because you're in an optimum state. So we can create those states intentionally. And when we do so, we create a level of protection. One more thing I'll say about protection is I'm a big fan of prayer and deliberately asking to be connected and surrounded with beings of the highest light, right? And so I use that often before I do any sort of session, even interview, anything. I just intentionally ask. And that is incredibly powerful too, to actually send out that intention, that request for help, and give your higher self, your guides, permission to actually assist you and surround you with their vibration so that you're uplifted. So when you start this inner work, this psychic work, that you're starting it from, again, this optimum state.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for unpacking this. And also when you were speaking, you were mentioning about the energy and the frequency, because in the end, it all comes down to this leveling of energy, this matching of energy.
Yes.
And at the moment, because of our planetary shift, anyway, of those incoming cosmic energies, those are also helping us, don't you think? What would be your perspective on this?
Yeah, 100%. So Sarai discussed, and I can't remember how long ago this was, but she did discuss about we are in this area of space that is facilitating this. And so there's a lot being broadcast in our direction, right, that we can choose to align with or not, right? So when we choose to align with that, then we will shift our energy. And a lot of times in terms of spiritual experiences, when let's say we're not specifically focused on developing our psychic abilities, but let's say we are starting to feel this, we're starting to have we're starting to awaken spiritually, we're starting to feel that. Sometimes it happens spontaneously where people have this realization, oh, this isn't truly who I am. This is the human me. But they have this realization or this awareness that who they are is the soul, or who they are is something much more vast, right? So that's the awakening experience. But a lot of times when people have that experience, these abilities start to come online naturally as a result of that. They don't have to go looking for it. They don't have to take a class or read a book. They just start to receive these impressions. And the reason that I think that is because I think this is the future human. So as we're evolving into, a more evolved collective, let's put it that way, or a more spiritually aware collective, I feel that the future human is, psychic, aware of their psychic abilities, utilizing these psychic abilities, living from their intuition, not from their programmed ideas and thought forms, right? So that's, I think, our future. I don't know how far down the line, but we have a lot of assistance at this time, a lot of cosmic assistance, all our guides, our guardians, our higher self. There's a lot of incoming energy to support this at this time.
Yes, actually, maybe could you share about Sarai and your relation with her? How did it start, and when did you start to, have this unique relationship with her?
Yeah, so it started a few years ago, but I had been studying mediumship. So way back in time when I was a makeup artist in the mid-2000s, that's when I started to I guess you'd say, have this spiritual awakening. And along with that, these senses started to come online. I didn't know what was happening. So this is like 2005, 2006. Now, as that progressed, as time unfolded, that progressed into mediumship. And I tried to ignore that for a long time because I thought it was very strange, right? Like being aware of people's loved ones in the spirit world. I thought that was strange. I didn't know anybody around me that identified as a medium or was having this experiences. But as time went on, I started studying mediumship because I just couldn't, even though I tried to ignore it, it was just like constant. So I would go to yoga, I would go to a music rehearsal, I would go to a party, and I was having these experiences. So finally, I started studying mediumship. So channeling Sarai was sort of a spin-off of that because I didn't plan this, but I attended a workshop only because it was the only week of the year that I was free to travel, and I wanted to go to the Omega Institute, which is a spiritual retreat center in New York. So I decided I'm going. I don't care what workshop is on. I'll just take whatever's on. And it was trance mediumship. So that was in 2018. I started studying mediumship intensely, trance mediumship specifically with my teacher, just with the intention of becoming a better medium and connecting with the spirit world. I also started meditating daily in 2018. So until that point in time, I was like, I'd meditate sometimes, but I didn't have a consistent practice. Within about 2 to 3 months of really sitting down to meditate every day, I started to become aware of this energy on my left-hand side. Every single time, sit down, feel this energy. I felt that it was blue. It looked like a blue ball of light. It felt so supportive. Didn't really communicate, but I was just aware that it was there. Over time, again, more months went by and I realized, this is a being. And I could feel that it was female, and I could feel, it didn't feel like anything I'd ever witnessed before. It had a cosmic feel to it. Had this, I don't know how I could tell that. I guess it was this clairsentient sense, but I was just aware that this was different. This wasn't a being in the spirit world, but there was communication happening. And because of the loving energy I felt, I started to kind of open to receive communication. And so how it started was I would just sit with a pen and pencil and I would just automatic write these little transcripts. And then that just progressed. So I used those transcripts to start a YouTube channel. I would make really short videos on these topics that I was given. I didn't really say that I was channeling. I would just, transcribe what was said and then make a video of it. And then I guess just last year, 2023, I started a weekly meditation group. And again, very spontaneously, and again, as a result of shifting my state, there was 1 week where I was aware that all the words that had come out of my mouth were channeled, that it wasn't me speaking. So it kind of progressed from there. And then when I realized that, there was a friend in my group that I was like, hey, we should, try to film some of this, right? Because it seemed really interesting what was being said. And so that was how it started. And I wasn't planning it. I couldn't foresee it. It was just, again, something that started in a very subtle way. And then over the course of years, I guess about 6-7 years, it just progressed and progressed and progressed. So I think that's important to recognize because a lot of times when you're either developing an ability or developing a relationship with one of your guides, it's not like fireworks all of a sudden. I mean, it could be, but it's likely that it will be more of a subtle unfoldment, right? As you develop and as you get comfortable and as you build trust, both within yourself and within these extra dimensional relationships. You're building trust in each other and you're learning how to communicate, right? So it can take time. It can take some time.
Wow, it's beautiful. Yes, it's like with a human friend, I would say. I mean, it's like with anybody or pet or whatever relationship that we are starting to build. It takes time anyway, I guess.
100%. Yeah, right. And I think a lot of us are having these interactions. But I think it would be very unsettling for your human self to, for example, just be hit with it all at once. It's almost like we need the acclimation. And again, a lot of these beings are of a higher frequency. And so we also have to acclimate our system to match that in order to facilitate communication. I still feel a lot of times like I'm in the process of optimizing that, right? But I'm practicing all the time. So, hopefully I'm optimizing that process. But it is a resonance that's what facilitates the interaction and the communication.
Yes, it's really tuning a music instrument. I mean, it's like this also.
Yes, that's a perfect way to put it. 100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing this. And also, what I would be interested if you have maybe some insights, or what would you say? We've been talking about this, the fact that, those cosmic energies are coming, and that we are really, I think, really supported, and that we are, as a collective, growing on what we would say towards the golden earth. So what would be your take on this, and where do you think we stand as a collective as regard to this?
Yeah, so Sarai, I was doing some channeling yesterday for our YouTube channel, and Sarai had been talking about this. I think he had asked, I'm trying to remember exactly the question, but the answer was about focusing on this truth that all is one, right? That everything is a manifestation of source energy. Everything is divine. Everything is holy. And so when we focus on that, we start to diminish some of the separation that is causing a lot of problems on our planet at this time, right? That consciousness of I'm over here and you're over there, or I'm here and Mother Earth is over there. And so what I do has nothing to do with that. But the reality is that we are all connected. We're all emanations of one consciousness. That's a perspective shift, I think, that will be embraced in, let's say, the new earth or the golden earth, or for this future human. There'll be an awareness of that as truth. And so I think when I look out, especially spiritually, there's so much, conflict, because it's like, well, I have this belief system and that means I'm right and this one is wrong. And there's all of this, conflict of right and wrong and separation. But I think looking way out into the future, I don't know how far ahead it is, but looking in terms of this golden earth or this new earth, I just see a society or a civilization where there's a reverence for life, because there's a reverence that everything and everyone is holy.
Yes, that's
that
good.
Brings emotion, right? Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. So just feeling that, because that's meant to be there too. Yeah.
It beautifully ties in with the theme of the event, which is cosmic truth, oneness. So,
Yeah.
you tell us more about this notion of oneness, and what can we do at our level now as we stand in our human lives? What can we do to even more promote this and live this oneness?
Yes, that's a beautiful question. And it just occurred to me, like the cosmic truth, right? That is the cosmic truth, really, right? That we are one. And I didn't even think of that until that moment. It's like, oh, wow, we're very aligned in terms of just the message, I guess, that we're bringing forward. But in terms of actually making that a reality, well, let me just share this, is that one of the things that was really powerful for me in terms of when I first started receiving psychic impressions about other people was that this truth that we're connected. Because if I'm over here and that person is over there, whether they're in the same room or whether they're across the world in Australia, and I can quiet my mind and sit here and I can receive some message for them, some truth about them, something that is accurate. Well, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that I'm gifted. That means that we're all connected. That's what that means. And so when you start to, again, develop these abilities or develop these senses, and when you start to have those experiences of, I know what's going on with that person, or I know that one of my loved ones is not well, I'd better call them, even though, there's maybe no reason that you should know that. or whatever the sensation is, you realize the truth, the cosmic truth of interconnection, right? And so how you, again, I guess this is why we're talking about this, is because, again, developing those senses or developing those abilities and then actually having those experiences that other people may question, other people may judge or criticize, but you know that you've had that experience. I know that I've had, some sort of psychic impression about someone else, at a distance, right? Or I shouldn't know that, but I do. You can't deny that we're all connected, right? So again, developing these abilities is important because I think it's important for people to actually have the psychic experiences. Like, we can talk about it and people can kind of look at it like it's interesting, and some people look at it kind of like a party trick, right? Right, that kind of thing. But this is really reflective of that cosmic truth of interconnection and unity consciousness. And once someone has an experience, there's no going back from that. You wouldn't be able to talk me out of the experiences I've had, and probably same vice versa, right? So it's really important that people have experiences of interconnection, because then it's not a question. They can take that as truth because they've had the experience. Right. So again, quieting the mind, starting to be open to extra dimensional information, higher dimensional information that's coming to you from all these different sources, not the kind of hypnotic pull of your surface mind that's been programmed with thoughts, ideas of this reality, this current reality, which is based on, you could say that everything that's unfolding in this reality right now is kind of based on a past level of consciousness. It's reflective, but it's reflective of past. Where we are now, we're creating the future. We're creating the future in this moment with our level of consciousness, through how we think, speak, act, through the decisions that we make based on this new perspective that I'm connected. If you're aware that you're connected to other beings, and you're holding a reverence because you're aware of the holiness of another being, you're going to make different decisions. You're going to take different actions from that place, right? There wouldn't be war, actually, right? There wouldn't be all of these conflicts and these challenges. There wouldn't be environmental destruction. And so a lot of the problems and challenges that we're having right now, they're a result of our level of consciousness, which is a consciousness of separation. So this is why we're so passionate, and Lise, this is why we have to have these messages, because, this is a powerful message that will shift both people's individual lives and the collective. Just the awareness that we're interconnected, that everything is divine, everything is holy. We're not separate.
That's beautiful. That's very profound. And also it's very, I think it brings up also this notion of giving ourselves permission, in fact. Always because of the same thing, because of our childhood and where we were told to always listen to somebody else. But I think it's really giving ourselves allowance to open. And we come back to this, to open to what we receive.
Yeah.
Open our hearts, and our hearts being the true guides for this truth.
Yes, 100%. Well, your heart is very intimately connected with your soul self, right? So when people say follow your heart, that is another way of saying follow your soul. Or I like to say follow your passion, right? Passion, the energy of passion that you feel, that's communication from your soul. When you feel that excitement, that passion, that aliveness, when you think of, let's say, some options, you have 3 options. Well, which one feels alive? Which one do you feel passionate about? That's communication. Again, that's clairsentient impression from your soul. So yeah, you have to give yourself permission to live that way or to follow that, because I can tell you right now, there are going to be a lot of people that don't understand it, try to talk you out of it, perhaps are intimidated of you living that way, or jealous or whatever. And so if you're still kind of in the old reality, that's very seductive, right? It's like, oh, but I want to belong. I want to fit in. I want to just do what everyone else is doing. Well, no, if you're listening to this and it's interesting, it's Sarai always says, if you're finding this content interesting, then what's true is you're kind of a trailblazer, so to speak. You're here to break the mold and follow your heart, follow your passion, listen to your higher self, and follow that direction, follow that guidance. Because you're here to, again, you're creating that new level of consciousness, that new earth. If you're just going along with what everyone else is doing, I mean, and no criticism, no judgment, but you're just maintaining that level of consciousness. We're here to shift consciousness, to shift our level of awareness. But that starts with your individual connection to your higher self and starting to first recognize, what is my higher self telling me? What's the guidance? And then how can I start to put that into action? Even if it's teeny tiny. Doesn't have to be huge, because maybe that's the baby step you need to get on board or get comfortable with this. What's the teeny tiny baby step? And you ask your higher self that. Give me a baby step to start treading this path. I can't handle anything magnanimous, but can you just give me a little baby step to start me out? And then it's just like breadcrumbs, right? You follow that trail.
Yes, that's beautiful. And it circles back to what you were saying, that by doing this in our own individual path, we open up the path and we open up those new energies and new resonances for them to build up. So it's really magic, in fact.
It's total magic, 100%. And what's interesting is all of those higher dimensional energies, all of that cosmic energy, that's all there right now. But you are like a little radio tuner. And so what are you tuned to? You can either be tuned to your, so I would say to your the mental construct that is all the programming, all of the conditioning, all of that, which is the old you, or you can start to turn that dial and shift into something higher. What's difficult right now, I would say, about being human is because there's so much, evidence or manifestation of the chaos happening right now that really grabs your attention sometimes. And so it's sometimes hard to maintain your focus on those higher realms or higher dimensional energies when your evidence here in the physical is contrary to that. But I mean, that's where your practice comes in, right? That's why we meditate. We meditate to attune to something higher, and then we anchor that, and we become emanators of that in our reality. And so that has, again, because we're connected, it affects everybody around us, whether they are aware of that or not. And it actually makes it easier for others to make that choice too, to make that leap. So it's an exciting time to be alive right now, isn't it?
Very, very exciting and very beautiful, because, as you say, we connect more and more to all the living, to all that is, the animals, the plants, the earth, the soil, the water, and we realize that it's all us. And
yes, it's all consciousness. It's amazing. Yeah, it's all this emanation of consciousness. Even a rock, that you pick up that seems inanimate, that's a manifestation of the one divine consciousness. It's beautiful, right? It's a little bit easier to feel into when you're connecting with an animal or a plant. And so it's good to start there. But yeah, everything, even the ones in your life that are challenging you, relationships, whatever's happening, even that, there's something about that that's serving you, or it wouldn't be happening. There's some experience that your soul is seeking to have, or some lesson or some growth point there. So you want to take on that awareness that it's all serving me. It's all for my highest good.
Yes, absolutely. So I was wondering if maybe you would like to add something, or if you would like to have Sarai share a message with us.
Yeah, sure. I feel I feel an awareness of Sarai just wanting to talk for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So let me shift my state and I'll let her chime in to this. So we've very much been looking forward to this interaction, and we appreciate your participation with this interaction. And we also truly, deeply appreciate your dedication and devotion to share these universal truths, these cosmic truths with as many beings as you have access to. There's a great desire within the heart center to share and to devote yourself and to your life to these teachings and to this truth with a capital T. And so on this day, we'd like to speak just briefly about this subject of consciousness. You have been discussing consciousness, and what's true is that we wish for you to begin to think of yourselves and to think of consciousness as this sort of substance that you are. This is your true identity. And the ultimate truth, the highest truth, the universal truth, the cosmic truth, if you will, is that there is only one consciousness expressing itself through many different forms. And so this variation is important. It's not that in this reality you experience this illusion of separation, and it's not that you want to do away with that. But what you do want to do, or what you do want to be aware of or become aware of, is the notion that this experience of separation is actually illusory. In the higher realms and this higher truth, the true capital T truth is that there is only one of us here. There is one consciousness expressing. And of course, the reason that's important to contemplate and also begin to take on as your perspective is because it starts to break down this illusion of separation. So yes, you are here in these bodies experiencing the illusion of separateness, but you can also simultaneously feel, again with your clairsentience or your psychic sense of feeling, that the ultimate truth is that you are connected, and not only connected, but you are one. And so as Karen was saying earlier, this perspective shift is very important in terms of where you are going as a collective, because you have experienced and explored many things in this reality. And what's true is that this reality is evolving into a place that is much different than what you are experiencing at the moment. Now, the actual physical manifestation of the changes that are going to happen, that will happen, you could think of those changes as a sort of upgrade. So in the same way that you upgrade a computer to have a better operating system or software that runs more smoothly on your system, this reality is, you could say, this reality is due for an upgrade. And so part of that upgrade is this perspective shift, where you will slowly and gently shift in to first the perception, not of separation, but the perception of interconnection, right? That would be the first level of the upgrade. Eventually, you will take the next step, and the next step is the perception of oneness. So if you think of evolution sort of like a staircase in which you are being guided to make these upgrades one step at a time in a level or an increment that is appropriate and comfortable for your systems. This is the direction you are heading. And Lise, you are aware of that. You feel it in your system. And what's true is that you signed up to be a sort of facilitator. And many of those listening who find this interesting are facilitators of these higher levels of consciousness. Now, what's true is that in order to be a facilitator for these higher levels of consciousness, what you must do, or what you're intending to do from a soul level, is to come here and incarnate into the lower level of consciousness and all of the reflections in physical reality that are reflecting that lower level of consciousness. You agreed to come here, incarnate, dwell in these levels of consciousness, but you knew, or you set the intention, you knew that you could come here and experience that, to be in this reality, but you also knew that you had this ability of holding a higher level of consciousness while you're still in this physical form, despite all of the evidence of the contrary, that this is not where humanity is headed, that the outlook is dire. You felt from the level of the soul a sort of confidence that you could come here and hold the higher state while being totally immersed in the evidence of the lower state. And so again, this is sometimes what makes it challenging or discouraging or difficult, is because there really isn't, when you look out, especially at certain media broadcasts, there isn't a lot of evidence that is showing you this promise of the new reality. However, to you and to all those listening, we ask that you take a moment now to feel it, to feel it. Feel the rising of consciousness. Feel the future of the earth and the human collective, the human civilization. Feel into the trajectory of where this is headed, and feel into the level of consciousness that is starting to be anchored. Feel into this direction, this trajectory. And again, this is another reason why it's important to develop your intuitive senses, is so that you can feel for energy despite the actual physical realm and the physical manifestation offering you evidence of the contrary. So despite what's going on in physical reality, you begin to feel for something higher. You begin to feel for that upgrade. And then you begin to anchor that, first in your individual physical system. And in doing so, you become an emanation of that frequency. As you become an emanation of that frequency, you affect all those around you and all those that you are connected to, which is everyone. It becomes easier for others to access that higher dimension, or that higher level of consciousness, that higher perception. It becomes easier for those connected to you to access that once you have accessed that and anchored it. And so this is the reason there are so many light workers and starseeds on Earth at this time. They form a sort of grid, if you will. A sort of grid that is anchoring these higher dimensional frequencies. And along with those frequencies, because it's not just about the energy, it's about the perspective through which you begin to see and perceive this reality when you are operating at that higher level of consciousness. So again, there's that example of, in the lower levels of consciousness, you perceive and you believe that you're separate. But in the higher realms, first you believe and you perceive that you're interconnected. And then eventually you see and perceive that you are one. You are one being. And so again, this is where you are headed. And so if there are any questions that you have that we can answer, we will gladly take any questions at this time.
Well, thank you, Sarai, for all that you shared. Maybe one question would be, and Karen already mentioned a few things, but if you have your own advice on how we can even more open up to this truth of who we are.
So in order to open up to the truth of who you are, you have to first recognize that this physical body and this vessel and the accompanying mind, the mental body and the emotional body, is not who you are. You begin there. Now, how do you do that? Well, you sit in meditation, and as you sit over and over again, there's a point in time where you recognize that you are actually the observer or the witness of the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body. You are this consciousness. You are the one watching. We often liken it to a computer in which the physical body is the hardware, the mental body is the software. You are the one sitting at the computer. You're the user, the observer, the witness. And in the same way that the user can program the computer, it can decide what software it wishes to run on the computer. You can decide what thought forms, what beliefs, what storylines, what narratives you wish to program into your mind or your mental construct. But it begins with this awareness that if you are the one looking at the mind, if you are the one observing the body, if you have that sense, even a subtle sense of distance, of just being aware of those things, you can start to realize and recognize your true identity as pure consciousness. Now, as you strengthen and amplify that awareness, you start to distance yourself ever so slightly from this physical vessel or this human construct, and you begin to feel, again with your clairsentient ability, that there's something about you that is much bigger and much more vast than this little human. You can feel that as truth. So can we prove that? No. But each and every one of you can tune into that, tap into that, and feel that that is true. Now, some of you will have actual experiences. There are many on your planet who have had sort of near-death experiences or other experiences in which you actually have an experience, perhaps a more dramatic experience, where you are separated from your physical, mental construct, your human construct. So for some of you, that's what's required. But we would say the easiest way, the most graceful way, is to sit with an energy of devotion or an energy of reverence, sit in meditation daily, and just observe yourself. Observe what's going on within the mental construct. Observe the sensations within the physical body. And then center yourself. Realize that you are this observer, this consciousness. And that recognition is also reflective of the fact that who you truly are is this vast, eternal, light being who's had many interesting incarnations, who's here for the joy and the thrill of what it's like to live this human experience. There's so much joy and reverence, excitement and passion within the soul self when it contemplates the opportunity to have this human experience. And so just begin to tune into that in your meditation. And over time, you'll recognize who it is you truly are.
Thank you. I don't know if Sarai would like to add something. Anyway, thank you very much from the depths of my heart.
So as we begin to depart, we'll just leave you with this greeting that we often part with. And so this is a Sanskrit term. The term is Sat Nam. To us, this means true identity, true identity. And so feel into that broadcast or that emanation. And the meaning behind that, from our perspective, is that we see, sense, know who you truly are at all moments in time. Even when you forget, even when you get lost in this human experience, we are aware of who you truly are. We know that all is well, nothing has gone wrong, that you are an eternal being, that everything will work out, that everything is working out. We broadcast that truth to you in every moment in time until the day in which you are aware of that truth and can anchor that truth for yourself. And so with that, we will leave you with that greeting on this day. Sat Nam to you and all those listening. Sat Nam to you.
Nam. Thank you.
Coming back.
Not man. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarai. Thank you again. Well, to conclude the interview and coming back to our reality here, You are offering a free gift to our audience. You are offering a free printable journaling pages. So could you speak about it, please?
Yeah, so I wish I had them in front of me. I didn't think to have them in front of me, but what I created on my computer is just a set of free printable journaling pages that will help you recognize and develop your intuitive ability. So there's little spaces on these worksheets. You can think of them like a worksheet to help you recognize, what am I, when you sit down to meditate and then you take some time, what am I seeing? What am I feeling? What am I hearing? What is any physical sensations? So it'll help you recognize, first of all, what or how psychic information feels in your system or how it arises in your system. So that's a good place to start. I always recommend that people keep some sort of psychic journal. It helps you recognize how the information is coming in. And then it also helps you recognize down the road, if you don't look at it for a week and then you read it a week later, it often is like, oh, wow, like that information doesn't feel like it was coming from me. It feels like it was coming from my higher self or from a guide or from my loved one in spirit. So it's a really, really effective way to develop your psychic ability over time is to keep some sort of journal. So you can use my worksheets as a starting point to get to know the process.
Well, that's beautiful advice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this gift, and thank you for sharing this amazing wisdom. Thank you again, Sarai. And it's been lovely being here with Karen, and Namaste Satnam.
Yes, namaste. Thank you so much. It was really beautiful sharing this time with you. Thank you.